All right, guys. So let's get to actually coding this stuff. So we have all these pages already that we created. Basically just routes, so that we can actually start mapping our data through object of arrays or array of objects, object of objects, or array of arrays, right? So let's go ahead and use these routes, but we're gonna pick one just to start off. I guess array of objects would probably be the best. We're going to use this one to start off with that. But before we do anything, we need to start mapping into our data and make sure that we have access to our data that is in the DB JSON object that we created, right? And I share this separately so that you don't have to, so that you have it available for you. All right. So how we're going to do this is, first of all, remember at the beginning, I asked you guys to install JSON server. We're going to need that. So to make use of that, we have to go back into the package.json file and create a new instruction here, and that's going to be somewhat like that, but not that one. I'm going to call it server, and that's going to be, yeah, that's right there, JSON server. So that means basically it's going to use JSON server as the package that is going to the node package that is going to serve, and it's going to watch this file right here. But that's not the right place, because this is relative to the package.json location, which means you got to start by the source, and that's going to be src/assets/dbjson. And then for the port, I'm going to use 3010 because I'm already using 301 somewhere else. So hit save, and now if I open a new other window here, this is giving me an error somewhere, but I'll deal with that. I don't know, maybe that was something else. All right, so I am going to start my server by basically putting npm run server that I just typed up here. It's what I called it, but it could be anything you want it to be. And if everything is running fine, you should be able to get something like this, where you're going to have the main home localhost that is serving, but it's also going to have an endpoint at the end of it. We're going to be using an array of objects, so we're going to be using this one. And if I just go right there, I should be able to pick it up right there, and there's all the data right there. So now that we have access to that, we're going to start creating our basically your first call. All right. So let's go to the array of objects right here, our first, our home place, right? And we're gonna make our call there. So in order to do that, we're going to start by creating a use effect and a use effect and a use state. So import from React use state and use effect, and that's gonna come from React. Now that we have that, we can basically start fetching our URL, fetching our data, and putting it inside of a state that we're going to create, and making sure that we can load and refresh our data every time we refresh the page on load. And that's what the use effect will do, which is trigger an onload lifecycle. So let's go ahead and inside let's gonna put our first console. Let's just for the sake of keeping things the same as I have mine built, so that if I run into any issues, I know I can backtrace my steps. And let's call it state and set state. Okay, that's just a mutation, a state that I'm going to mutate with a copy of the data that I'm going to be getting from the JSON, and the set state is going to be the function that is going to set that as my new state. Set that thing that I'm going to fetch and set it inside my new state. All right, so now that I have that there, I'm going to open up a use effect. Yeah, sure. I'm going to open up a use effect function, and I'm going to go ahead and close it, and it closes just like this. I think I'm good. Yeah, I think I'm good right there. All right. And I'm not going to make the fetch call in there. Instead, I'm going to make it outside. So I want this to be an asynchronous call. The reason why is because I want this call to the API to run independently from whatever it is loading on the UI, including the UI itself. I don't want the UI to be ready before my data, and I don't want my data to be ready before my UI is ready to display it. So I kind of want them to run along on their own, so no one is holding anybody up. So for that, you're gonna make an instruction that is gonna be basically an async function, an asynchronous function, and that's going to call a function called getData. Function, a synchronous function called getData. And I'm gonna go ahead and open and close my function. Now inside there, I want to start off by creating a variable, and I'm gonna call it request options. There you go. And inside the request options, I am going to put basically the way that I want to shape my data. So basically the method to begin with, which is going to be a get, and then the redirect follow, and that's okay. That's all part of the plan. All part of the plan. All right, so that's all looking good. And then now I can go ahead and inside my asynchronous function, I am going to, somewhat like that, I am going to create a response, and I'm going to await it, and then make the fetch call to my API location. Now my API location is this one. So I'll grab that and put it in here. Now it's important that if you're using this for real world like API locations where they need to be secret, that you don't put the API URL right there on the screen that they can be picked out by anybody else. Make sure that it's saved somewhere else securely, and then import here by method of an import with a word that could be used as a variable to retrieve it, but like an environment variable, something like that. Just don't put the URL straight up there where people can just look at it. Okay, so now they have that there. The next thing is going to be to pick up just exactly like that. I don't like using data, so I'm gonna use results instead, result. And I'm gonna basically save it inside of results. I'm gonna save my response. Once I'm gonna wait for it till it's ready, and then I'm gonna pick it up, the response in JSON format, and I'm gonna save it inside my results. So if that is all working correctly, I should be able to see my result in the data, but in order for that to happen, I have to fire this getData, and I'm gonna fire it up right here. And the reason why I want to do it in the use effect is because I want this to happen on load, and the use effect is a function that happens whenever you load the page for the first time. Not for the first time, but every time you load the page. So if you don't do this, if you call it out here for example, then it's not going to load unless you trigger it some other way, by a click event maybe, hover event, whatever event. But in this case, the event that is going to load it is going to be the load event, or the use effect, which is the load event. So if everything is running copacetic right now, I should be able to run my page and look inside my console, and there we go. We can see the data is coming in right there. So everything is looking good. So far, so good on that. Obviously, we don't have any data on the screen because there's nothing that we're mapping on the screen yet. We're basically just making a call to the data. So in the next one, we're going to create a specific component that is going to be able to do that. That is going to make the structure of the UI the way we want it, so that we can use it in every page that we want. See you guys in the next one.